Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor Digital and the Doctor Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Do you know the ancient diagnostic techniques of naturopathic medicine? Unlike conventional medicine that relies heavily on lab tests and imaging, naturopathic doctors utilize practices like looking at facial features, such as skin tone, lines, and puffiness, to potentially identify underlying health concerns. The color, texture, and coating of the tongue are examined to glean information about digestion, organ function, and overall health. Fingernails' appearance, including shape, color, and markings, might be used to suggest potential nutrient deficiencies or health problems. What if there was a unique addressing of the root cause of health issues? Naturopathic doctors often take a more comprehensive view of a patient's health than conventional medicine. They might look beyond immediate symptoms to identify underlying imbalances or lifestyle factors contributing to the problem. And naturopathic treatments are often tailored to the specific needs of each patient. This can involve dietary remedies, herbal medications, stress management techniques, and lifestyle changes. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics in naturopathic medicine to improve your health and to leverage the expertise of my guests to understand naturopathic medicine and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest, who is a naturopathic wellness expert. Please welcome my special guest, Dr. Randi Shannon. With that, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. And hello to your audience. I'm super happy to be on here. We got the digital doctor and the naturopathic doctor. How fun is that?
That's
That's
right.
great.
We'll combine the two and we'll be a mighty force.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's huge.
You know,
So,
you're in an unusual field, and I'm just wondering, how did you get interested in something like this and not conventional medicine? I think that would make a fascinating introductory story.
well, as a kid, that was my first introduction to an actual tongue analysis. I was somewhere around 9 years of age, and you know how the doctor puts a popsicle stick on your tongue,
Sure.
and they usually are
Absolutely.
looking at the tonsils. This one
Yes.
put it at the very tip of my tongue, holding my tongue down, and
Uh,
he actually analyzed it there in that moment. And he asked my mom, is she eating a lot of sugars? So he must have been looking at my digestive or seen that I had candida
okay.
out of control, or, I'm not really sure what that man was looking for because at the time I had no idea what his background totally was. I just knew him as a medical doctor. And so we killed the sugars out of my diet, and the whole reason I was there, which was for a urinary tract infection, never got another one my whole life, and I had cut the sodas, the Kool-Aid,
Mm,
all
okay.
of those processed sugars, which were rampant back in the early 70s. They're worse now, but when I was a little kid, that's when Twinkies and things were coming out, and they were so delicious, right? So grandma had the candy jars. Yeah.
Yeah. So this has now been some time. So I'm curious, from that time when you were in the background or when you were smaller, are there some changes that you can identify on what has happened? And I've said we've talked about this and I've shared this is my own interest because I worked at a university, was actually based on the work of Samuel Hahnemann, homeopathic doctor. So what would you say are some of the changes that have taken place over some years here?
Well, you went to a school where they still practiced naturopathy somewhat until the
Mm,
1950s, but
yeah.
there was a lot of big money, Carnegies and Rockefellers.
Okay.
And maybe to your audience, they don't necessarily know the story, but they took over the original medical schools, which were
Mm,
naturopathic, all naturopathic. So for a headache or pain, we would use white willow bark, and then they took that and changed it somewhat and made it into a patent something that they could sell for a lot more money. And they created things like Tylenol. Well, that whole world did not interest me. All my life, for whatever reason, I was really against putting any kind of a drug or over the counter anything into my body. So
Exactly.
so I always had a love and a passion for everything healthy. I really didn't like the thought of mercury or aluminum encasing things that went into the arm. I always felt like that's not good. And then you heard the rumors of things from aborted fetuses being added to that. And
Yep.
then you heard about it being put in certain food products. So it made me go eyes wide open everywhere and
Hmm.
looking, okay, is this what I really want to do? And I've had a whole lifetime of being in marketing and sales and an entrepreneur. But later in life, I'm 56 now. So I just decided, you know what? I want to go back to school. And I did, and hunkered down and put myself through naturopathy school. And while in there, one of the just brief topics was, I don't even think they really did face analysis, but they definitely did tongue, but it was very brief. There were so
Hmm.
many other things that were important to them to teach, but I didn't really take a ton of interest in any of them. But I found I was great at this. And
Oh,
that became my love. And then I moved forward with that.
interesting. The drug process that you described reminds me and sounds like what has happened to food. So let's say you take a really good food item, potatoes, and then what happens to the food? Well, it becomes a potato chip, right?
Yeah.
So the potato is healthy, potato chip is not, but it reminds me of the same kind of process has happened with taking something which is good in nature and making a drug out of it. I'm curious, are there some things that you could identify as topics or hot topics in your field, and what should people be aware of, do you think?
Well, not all naturopaths are the same. I don't have a dislike for medical doctors. I feel
Sure.
bad because they're not taught
Yeah.
really anything about what I know, which is how to actually deal with the chronics. So they're more in the field of disease management because they're immediately bombarded with this prescription, this prescription, this prescription, cutting, removal, take this drug, take these 20 drugs as things can progress. And they think that these things actually slow down what's happening, for example, like osteoporosis, where the cartilage and the ligaments and the joints and everything become weak, break down over time. So they think if you take a drug, it's going to slow it down.
Mm,
Well, the body despises synthetics. It only wants real. We're made from
mhm.
real. It only wants real. So when you give it that, you're really not slowing anything down. You might be getting a little bit of pain relief, but you're not slowing it down. The body needs raw material put in, and then it will come back. We've all heard the saying, my mom uh, fell down and broke her hip. It's
Right?
really the opposite. Her
Huh.
hip broke and then she fell down. The core becomes weak. If you're a vegan, that's going to make all the vegans mad. The core becomes weak. How do I know this? Because I have vegans come to me. The latest one was diagnosed with 7 compression fractures. Her core was literally falling apart. 30 days with me, and she had staff, and they didn't know what she was doing. And they said, "Wow, you're finally walking like a human again," because she was
Mm.
all bent over, couldn't raise her arms to even wash her own hair. And in 30 days, that completely changed. In 6 months, you can see that cartilage regrowth on an x-ray. It's proven time and time again. People think they can't get stem cells any other way than injection. Not true. You just need raw material and your body will remake them on
Yeah,
its
it's
own.
it's interesting because to say it's not to be anti-medicine, but
No.
anti-medical. But what it seems to me, there's a lot of masking of issues, which is really the
Yes.
attractive element of what you're doing. Like
Mm.
if my arm hurts, then they shoot you up with something, and then well, my arm doesn't hurt anymore. But what was the cause of that? Do we know what those things are? And that's where I think the chronic issues are really addressed by what you're describing. And that's not necessarily what you're going to find out from conventional medicine, because it's like a machine, it's a factory, just move people
It's
along.
totally it. I mean, you can combine about 3 countries, and the money spent over $6.5 trillion just on osteoporosis alone. Things like diabetics. Diabetics come and they'll tell me at 40, 50, 60, even 20-year-olds, I was just diagnosed as a type 1. Well, that's impossible. That can only come from birth. But I don't know if the medical doctors just don't know or what's going on with them, because that's a misdiagnosis. And a later in life type 1 is actually really a type 2, and that has always been reversible. That's not something
Hmm.
I'm making up. It takes 4 to 6 months, and a type 2 is reversed. It was raw material that the body needed. And there's probably a few other things that aren't really functioning properly, and the body will scream out and show signs. And then when I see those signs, then we address that as well. Unlike traditional doctor, hey doctor, I'm hurting over here. And so
Yeah.
he'll go look over there and he'll give you something to relieve that pain, but he's not really getting to the root cause. You
Right.
got to get to the root cause. And that's what naturopaths do.
Okay.
And, people think, that they can't see me because I'm in Miami, Florida. My clients are all over the world, every state in this country and all over the world. They send pictures. That is the beauty of today's modern age. You don't have to walk into my office. You
Mhm.
just send me the pictures. You schedule online, you come into my office, bada boom, we get you better. And it's not me, it's your body that does it. We're just getting it what it needed so it can
It
fight.
it reminds me of, there's an expression that actually worked on my dissertation, had to do with dance, and there's a feeling in dancers, and they talk about this. It's like the body speaks, and the body is something which is really alive and living organism, and therefore you could listen to your body because your body is telling you things. I think you just need the expert to explain what is, and translating what the body is telling you, because most people don't know that, and most conventional doctors are not trained in that as well.
Exactly.
Could
Yeah.
you tell us about, like, some of the things that you would say the average person or the average individual, what they can do, or give some suggestions on how to help themselves and how to better their health?
Okay, so I went on Sean Hannity radio and I shared something I'm about to share with your audience, and the Twitter feed lit up. Oh, it can't be true. It can't be true. It is true. So I'm going to help the audience to understand, which on Sean Hannity, I ran out of time, so I wasn't able to fully explain it. So one of the things, well, let's just go through it. Number one cause of death in this country is heart-related issues. Two is cancers, and those are absolutely rampant right now. Heart is as well. And three is the medical doctors. It's basically their screw ups with prescriptions, or you got staph, or they did the wrong surgery. There's a woman up in Orlando who was pregnant, gave birth. She was a diabetic. And for whatever reason, they felt like they needed to amputate her leg. Well, they made the mistake and amputated the wrong leg.
Oh, Lord.
So then they figured it out, and then they amputated the other leg that they originally meant. So here she was, a brand new mom. Nobody went to jail for that, by the way. Nobody
Oh,
went to jail. Unbelievable. So a brand new mom who had two legs that could have had that issue reversed in 4 to 6 months was now
mm,
a stump. And that was in the press, and nothing happened. So medical doctor screw ups is the number 3 cause of death. So uh, you know, um, let's just go with diet. This is the
okay.
easy one that people can
Sure.
do from home easy. No wheat, barley, rye, oatmeal, or buckwheat. No fried foods. No foods cooked in any oils. That's where they're going to argue, and I'm going to go back to that one. No processed meats. No carbonated beverages. There's studies that show that that cuts our life in half when you drink carbonated beverages, because the body doesn't want that. It
Mm,
wants oxygen, and you're bombarding it with all this other. Um, the processed meats are salamis, lunch meats. They're full of nitrates and nitrites. These are all chemicals. that we don't want in mass in our body. So the oils is a biggie where they argue. People will fight for coconut and fight for almond and olive, etc. So I want people to understand, take a bite out of an apple, set it
Hmm.
on the counter. What does that look like in 3 hours?
That's terrible.
Right? 3 weeks, 3 months, and in
Mm,
some people's cases, 3 years. They'll have that bottle of oil for 3 years. It's oxidizing.
yeah.
Every second that the oxygen is hitting that, it starts to rot and die.
Yeah.
And so they pump these oils full of gases so that they don't taste or smell rotten and rancid, when in fact they're disgusting. And so this is a fad. Our grandparents or great grandparents, they were cooking with tallow and lard.
Mm,
Tallow is a biggie. You want sustainable farmed. It would be the same if you were eating with lard. Butter, if people say I can't have butter, then go with ghee. If you can't have dairy, then you go with goat products. So, everybody's big on this. I've got this allergy. The allergy is really not to the way the food was in its raw form, it's to the factory farmed. Stop buying that. Support the little guys, and you'll get much healthier food. But back to that apple starts to turn brown,
yep.
it becomes rotten, it withers up. It's the same with the oils. So you don't cook with the oils because in the processing, that was probably exposed to oxygen for an ungodly amount of time. Then they put it in the bottle, and there's an air gap between the oil and the lid. So the whole time it's sitting in the warehouse to the factory or to the grocery store to finally to your house, months have gone by.
Yeah.
That's rotten and rancid. Now, if you're making it in the moment and you eat it in the moment, I'm
Right.
super good with that. But that's not what people are doing. And also, the almond milks, the coconut milks, these things when you go to the coffee shops like Starbucks, where it's all, genetically modified anyway. I mean, I would never be caught dead in there. I have before I knew. It was really cool and fun to hang out at the coffee shop, but not there. Now I go to the organic, non genetically modified ones. I give them my business because they took the extra steps to
Hmm.
feed me properly, to make sure that that water was clean, etc. So you want to make sure that you're stopping all these fad places. You're killing yourself early. You're shaving your life off. The average medical trauma doctor, by the way, lifespan is about 56 to 57 years of age. Why would you want to take advice from them?
You're probably the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you tell us what the expertise that you offer? Because I think there's probably not enough people are understanding what you do. So, what sort of expertise do you offer? And you've got some interesting things that you alluded to really early on the tongue analysis and the analysis of the body. So, what is your expertise? What do you do?
Well, it's funny when I go out with my friends. There's a couple places here in Miami where it's like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. And if I go with my girlfriends, my guy friends, whatever, they're like, "Hey, do you know Doctor? Do you know Doctor Shannon? Stick out your tongue. That's what she does for a living." So it's always the spark of the life of the party. There we go. So it's hilarious. But what I do, and I can't believe that I grew up and became this and am doing this, but it's so fascinating. I can look at
Yeah.
faces, fingernails, and tongues and other marks of concern on the body, and I can see what organs are screaming out for help. So when
Hmm.
I do an analysis, I have consultations too where I don't look at pictures, but if I look, let's say I do a tongue analysis, I'm only looking at the top and bottom of the tongue. If I do a full, I'm looking at the face, the fingernails as well, and the tongue. And then if there's something going on, whether it's varicose veins or a rash or moles or anything, I take a look at all of that. And I want to know where they are because it's very specific. I was sitting at the aftermath of a friend's funeral, and the room was full of all people in the whole medical community. I was the only naturopath. And one of the nurses that was sitting there said, "I've got this cherry colored mole, red mole that just keeps coming up on my leg, and so they keep freezing it off." And all the other medical people were just piping up, oh, yeah, that happens in the old folks' homes. We see it all the time. We just encourage everybody to freeze it off. And, sometimes they come back with a vengeance. Da, da, da. I was listening to all this and I was like, OMG, mind
Sure.
blown that these are all people supposed to be helping
Yeah.
us. And so I made one comment about what it could possibly be.
Mm.
And the whole room was like, what do you do? I need to see you. Give me your card. Do you have a card? So same thing at a networking event, and it was for home builders here in Miami. I'm not a home builder, but sometimes I like to go to different events if I'm invited, etc. This is always speaking opportunities, and home builders, we want them 6 feet above, not 6 feet below. So
Sure.
yeah, and sometimes they're the most neglected, unhealthy people. So there was a gentleman at the table, and there was over 100 people at the event and 6 to 8 people at this table that I was at, and everybody was kind of talking in their own little conversations. And one guy, as the food came, he started to belch and have hiccups uncontrollable. Just boom, boom, boom. And I was watching him and I picked up the salt shaker because I was in a conversation with somebody else. So I picked up the salt shaker and I kind of reached it over to him and I said, put a bunch of that on your hand. He just barely flicked it. I said, no, take a bunch and just, or put it on a spoon. And he did. And it was instant stop. What would the medical community say? Take a Tums. They want you to go alkaline in the only system of the entire body that's supposed to be super acidic. So you throw more acid on that fire, not alkalinity on that fire.
Mm.
And it was instantaneous. So that was just a band aid, definitely not the cure, but it helped him in that moment and it was over. And that was another situation where everyone in the room at that table that witnessed that, because everybody could see this guy. And they were like, what do you do? So it is fascinating to know little tricks too that you can just pop out there and help somebody in the moment. So we
Sure.
do teach a course on this. So I have one coming up.
It sounds fantastic
Yeah,
because of all these things that are very different. And we've talked about the changes and topics and also some tremendous amount of advice for the average person. I'm curious now because I'm sure other people are curious. So, how do they get a hold of you? And I'd like to know more information about what it is that you do.
absolutely. So to call my toll-free line, no one's going to answer this, but it's going to give you a little spiel at the front and it's going to ask you for some details. So be ready to leave them into the voice message.
Okay.
That's 844-275-1056. 844-275-1056.
Okay.
And then they can also just go schedule on my calendar. It's the body can, because the body can heal
Sure.
itself is the point. Thebodycan.com/schedule. And the new date for the new course, because I'm in the middle of one now,
Okay.
it'll pop somewhere in the next week. I'll have the new date. That's thebodycan.com/take. And if they just type that in, it'll bring them to the course page and they'll be able to get the date and all the details. The pricing and everything is there now. They just are waiting for the new date on that one because I'm knee deep in a course now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this wealth of information and packed in such a short amount of time. So, Dr. Shannon, we appreciate your time, your expertise, and I encourage everybody to reach out and to get healthy. Thank you for taking some time out and chatting today.
Love it. Thank you so much. And if you're sitting here, by the way, you know what? I'm going to throw your audience a freebie. If
Oh,
they call that toll
yep,
free line between now and let's say Sunday, okay, I will give everybody a 10-minute consult. Normally they're 20 minutes. I'll give you 10 minutes. Now that's not looking at pictures, but if you need some guidance, direction, you got just a couple of quick questions, we'll get it out in that 10 minutes. And I do hold to that time. So, but they have to mention your show. Okay.
fantastic. Thank
Yeah,
you. What a nice
absolutely.
surprise.
Yeah, I don't think I told you that in advance. I was going to throw
No,
that
a
to your
surprise,
audience.
but
So,
thanks for that. I appreciate it. And thanks again for the
absolutely.
time. Much obliged.
Thank you so much.
You bet. So, if you like what you're hearing as much as I do, because I hopefully you do as well, make sure you are listening, subscribing, sharing, and positively reviewing the program. And of course, we always want to thank our sponsors. That is both the On Track, Ian Hunter, and Burning America for those support and all of our sponsors. Thank you for listening, and hopefully you'll pay attention for next time. We've got some other great shows coming up, just like Dr. Shannon. Until next time,